Well, President-elect Donald Trump continues to shock many Americans as he prepares for his first day in the Oval Office. So far, he's threatened to end U.S.-Cuba relations after the death of their former leader, Fidel Castro. He's also nominated a health secretary who has been known to be anti-Obamacare, and party leaders are asking for an election result recount, as many Americans are still refusing to accept the end results of November 8th's presidential elections. Here now to join us in the discussion, we welcome now political commentator J.C. Polanco, educator and at the Borough of Manhattan Community College, and good to have you.
Thanks for having me this morning.
And our political commentator. So listen, as you're laughing, but let me first talk. I know you have a different perspective. Julio was on the last segment talking about.
Yeah, you know, I got to tell you, Mr. Pavone is a community leader. He's an author. He's been an entrepreneur. He's one of the most important leaders in our Latino community as far as keeping the culture alive and well here in the Bronx. But I couldn't disagree with him more on Fidel Castro. And I would love the opportunity to just be able to sit with him here on BronxNet to talk about Castro, because I think that there's so much more that needs to be said. And from a more Republican perspective and a more objective perspective, I think we should be able to have that discussion. So it was a great discussion this morning. Hopefully down the road, Nancy, if you hear me, let's try to get a debate going with Mr. Pavone. I would love that.
Yeah, we're going
to talk about it.
We'll set that up.
I got to tell you, I think that you saw in President-elect Trump someone that is very loyal to the Cubans in Miami. I got to tell you that when I saw him say Fidel Castro is dead, it's almost like a high five to the people in Miami that were waiting for this moment for a long time. And I think you're going to see quite an opposite reaction from President-elect Trump than President Obama. I think he's serious about changing the way Cuba does business before alleviating any more of the trade embargo and commercial negotiations that we may have coming down the road. And I think it depends on Raul Castro to demonstrate some of that. So, for example, of Raul Castro letting go some of those prisoners that escaped to Cuba, some of those refugees like Miss Shakur, yes, that's right, for her, maybe her to come back before we continue discussing any more negotiations with Cuba, and countless others that have left the United States not facing justice to seek freedom in Cuba. Perhaps it is democratic elections in Cuba. Perhaps it is a revisit to some of the human rights issues that we're seeing in Cuba. So I think all those things, I think President-elect Trump is going to want to see happen before we have discussions about the furtherance of trade.
Well, we'll continue to talk about President-elect Trump and some of the decisions that he's been making prior to taking the White House. And one of those things that he's doing is he has nominated Health Secretary Tom Price, who is known as a staunch anti-Obamacare advocate. Your thoughts, first of all, on the president-elect's picks for his cabinet, because you have many Americans saying that this is about the most divisive cabinet that you could ever put together.
You know, my best advice would be for President-elect Trump to consider J.C. Polanco for ambassador to the Dominican Republic. I think I'd be a uniter, not a divider, but that just self-promotion. But I have to tell you, Daren, there are some picks here that are make me cringe. And there, as a guy who was never Trump and who is optimistic now and understanding that, you know, we have to accept the results of the election and try to see the good in things, like so many other former never-Trumpers. I think that, you know, picks like Jeff Sessions are concerning to a Dominican American like myself. Some of the things he said on the floor of the Senate concern me. I'd like to hear more about what he's going to do about changing that view about Dominicans and immigration. I think that when you look at people like Steve Bannon, I think minorities across the country want to hear a little more about how is he not a member of the alt-right, so that we can feel more comfortable with this administration. But I have to tell you, not all is bad. We have Nikki Haley, who has been appointed the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations. She was someone that supported Marco Rubio, who I was with 100%. And I think she's great. She's an Indian American, daughter of immigrant, governor of South Carolina, and the future of the Republican Party, and someone who was opposed to Donald Trump. And here he is, you know, extending an olive branch to those of us that were in that camp with that nomination. You know, I think there's a lot to be said about some of the things that we see moving forward. So him meeting with Mitt Romney, even considering a person that was so against him, speaks volumes of what he's thinking. Now, I hope that the Mitt Romney consideration for Secretary of State is not like the ending in the movie Carrie or some sort of practical joke where, you know, Donald Trump gets the last laugh. I've thought of that. I've thought about that.
And I think that's what some people are saying.
I've thought about that, and I cringe at the thought. Can you imagine? Yesterday, Mitt Romney has dinner in the Trump Tower on the West Side. And, you know, after the dinner, he said, I had a great discussion. I'm impressed with what President-elect Trump, and he's giving a response to the press that somehow is magnanimous and almost apologetic to some of the things that he has said in the past and hopeful about the Trump presidency, a very different tone. I really hope this isn't a bad cop, good cop. Let's put Mitt Romney out there and not pick him or embarrass him at the last minute, because that would make a lot of people upset, especially those of us that were hopeful that Mitt Romney would get such a shot.
And talk to me about across the bridge. Governor Christie, of course, he's now making his statement saying, listen, I plan to fulfill my term in office, but he also did say if something great happens, that's just what happens in life. And But the reality is many people feel as though Bridgegate has really taken a toll on the Christie administration, so the best thing he possibly could do, and the only thing he could do, is really finish out his term. Agree, disagree?
Well, I think it's not genuine. I think he's lying. I'll give you an example of what I mean. It's like me saying, I'll continue teaching at BMCC. That is unless the Yankees draft me somehow in next year's draft. Really? The Yankees are not drafting me. He knows full well that Donald Trump wants nothing to do with him. And it's a shame that he actually sold his soul so early on to the Trump campaign and got nothing in return. Quite frankly, what I hear from the Trump campaign is that they're very upset that he allowed for a young mom to take the hit for Bridgegate when they believe that he was fully aware of what was going on. The reality is that his poll numbers are in the low 20s. New Jersey doesn't even want him. He only has a few months left. I think his term is over in 18. He has no shot of running for re-election because of the laws in New Jersey. I don't even know what's next. This is a person that is completely tainted. And as far as a New York Republican, he didn't even support our candidate for governor in 2014 as the leader of the Republican Governors Association. So there's very little love lost between those never Trump Republicans, moderate Republicans like myself across the country, and a guy like Chris Christie. So I think he should go into private practice or do something else with his life. That is, unless he doesn't get in trouble for Bridgegate and ends up losing his law license. The man is a complete disaster. I have nothing good to say about him. And I don't think New Jersey does. I don't think anybody does, to be honest with you. Neither does Trump, obviously.
Talk to me about Rudy Giuliani.
I think, Rudy Giuliani has demonstrated an incredible ability to manage. And I know that's controversial to say here in the Bronx, but I grew up here, and I grew up here in the 80s and 90s, and I'm not ashamed to say it. I saw a city where almost 3,000 of us were killed in the streets of New York, and sure, Dinkins and Clinton and Giuliani played a crucial role in changing things around. And I saw a mayor in Rudy Giuliani that was incredible. I think he did wonderful things for New York City. I do. I think that the crime reduction was because of the culture that he brought about in New York City. That was a controversial one because it created a lot of problems between the community and the police, I'm sure. And we can have those debates, and I'd love to have them. I don't approve of a lot of those things, but I think he was a great manager. As far as Secretary of State, I don't know how that's a fit for the mayor. I don't. I don't see how he has that foreign affairs experience. I know he's traveled a great deal for his company. I know he's dealt with dignitaries. As we heard earlier from Mr. Pabon, when the major leaders of the world came to visit, how he met with each one of them. I think that's great, but I don't know whether or not he can go up against Senator Corker or a person like Mitt Romney that have extensive foreign affairs experience. I think he's a better fit for other departments, perhaps Department of Homeland Security, maybe a better fit for the mayor.
But you do see him landing.
I don't see how he can. Look, the man is brilliant. The man is a wonderful manager. And I think there's some things I'd like to speak to him about regarding race relations that I don't think he understands. I don't think he's a bigot. I don't think he's a racist like so many of my community say. I do think that, and this is honest, and this, you know me, when I come here, this is truth serum juice right now.
Okay.
I think he doesn't appreciate or fully understand the historical consequences of race relations. I don't think he appreciates or understands how some things impact us directly. I don't think he willfully believes that we're inferior because we're black and brown. And remember, I'm no Uncle Tom Republican. I keep it real. I don't think that's the case. I think that he needs more people like me around him to explain to him the importance of race relations in the United States and how police and community can work together.
And the argument to that is, don't you think that people have already been around him to speak that to him?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so.
I believe so.
I think you have some leaders that are so polarizing and so strong that they don't allow for that type of information to seep through. I think that people like Donald Trump and Mayor Giuliani are those strong leaders that don't allow for that. And that's unfortunate. If they're watching tonight, or some of their associates are, I'd love to sit down and talk to you and tell you why it's important that race relations are improved and how important it is for community and police to get along. And I don't think you guys are racist. I think you just don't understand.
And I don't think if you did it before, you can do it now.
I haven't done it yet. Give me a shot.
And I'm not you.
J.C. Polanco for ambassador to the Dominican Republic.
See, here you go. Anybody get a job these days. All you have to do is just ask Donald Trump. Listen, so where do we see things going with the Trump campaign? Obviously, before, let me back. We got a lot of people out there who are watching, saying, can you please make some sense of this? Because there's still some talk that Hillary Clinton still could make it in. Give us this last perspective of what this long shot is.
Yo, this is not even this is not gonna happen. Would you guys stop? It's not gonna happen. Look, you had your chance. She blew it. You guys nominated someone that was terrible. I told you this. Go to the videotape and see how J.C. Polanco was here with Daren and said, you guys cannot nominate someone as corrupt as Hillary Clinton. She has more skeletons in her closet than your local cemetery. There's no way that this woman could get elected. There's no way that this woman could get the nomination. And the system, and I don't mean to take a term from Sanders or Trump, but the Democrats, as we see from Weekly, rigged the system to get her in. And because of that, President Obama's legacy has been flushed down the toilet thanks to that shenanigans. And guess what? There's no hope anywhere for Hillary Clinton to somewhat pull off an Hail Mary and win this election. What they're depending on is on December 19th, the electors meet, and there will be the renegade, faithless elector that's going to vote against the wishes of their state. If enough of those do it on December 19th, then maybe Hillary Clinton could be elected president. But with 306 electoral votes on Trump's side, you would need a lot of electors to go against the public vote, the actual vote in their state to make Hillary the next president. So that's not going to happen. It's almost like me telling you that at the end of this segment, I'm going to walk out of here with a six-pack of abs. It's not going to happen, Daren.
You sure? Luke Cage. All right, listen, we got to go. Thank you, J.C. Polanco.
Thank you so much, Daren.
See you next week.
See you next week.
All right, got to go. When we return, we're going to give you an update on a homeless situation. And we're going to talk about the homeless in St. Louis, Missouri, and why that's important. We'll explain right after this message.